Welcome to day 3 of your quest. Now is when the fun really begins. For the next 16 days, we're going to be going to take one behavior a day from that list of 16 behaviors that we gave you at the start, those behaviors that define the difference between highly evolved beings and human beings living in an unawakened state. Well, here is item number 1 on that list. An awakened species sees the unity of all of life and lives into it. Humans in an unawakened state often deny it or ignore it. The fact that a majority of human beings deny the unity of all of life is not a small thing. I believe, in fact, that the idea that everything is separate from everything else is the greatest obstacle to the rapid expansion of human potential and the rapid forward movement of human evolution. Right now, most people who believe in God, and that is, by the way, the largest number of people on the planet, still embrace a separation theology. This is a way of looking at God which declares that we are over here and God is over there. The story of separation had its origin in the first attempts of our species to understand that the life we are experiencing is what it is. What we call self-consciousness arose when we began to see or to know ourselves individually. Perhaps it was seeing our reflection in a cave-side pool that sparked this perception. We raised a hand to scratch our head and saw the man in the pool doing the exact same thing. And soon we began to conceive of the self. The next step in producing the perception of separation came, perhaps, as we sat around a campfire with our clan and found ourselves startled by a sudden flash of lightning in the sky, followed by a booming clap of thunder. We looked around anxiously, and we asked everyone at the campfire, by whatever way we could, whatever facial expression or sounds we made, "Did you do that?" And when everyone in the clan shook their head in a panicked no, we came to a startling awareness. There's something else out there. Something other than us. This something other also seemed far more powerful than us. It could cause wind and rain and violent storms, heat and dry spells that lasted forever. A frightening shaking and even an opening of the very ground on which we walked. It could even start fires in the forest all by itself. It became clear to us that we needed to find a way to control this something other, or our lives would forever be at its mercy. Yet we could not conceive of or imagine a way that we could do this. We tried everything. We knew we had to find a way to appease the gods. We didn't call the elements of life gods, of course. That word came along at a much later time. But we did think of this something other as an aspect of our existence that was both powerful and uncontrollable. We experienced some members of our clan, by the way, in exactly the same way. The biggest and the strongest and the most brutish among us ran rampant through the collective lives of the clan, and efforts were continually made to appease them. They were often brought offerings of every kind, from nubile virgins to plentiful food to beautiful things from the riches of the earth. Once, when the most brutish among us became more sullen and angry than usual, because of an unending drought that had occurred and the sacrifices it imposed on them, we joined others in our small group to do whatever we could think of to calm them down, lest they take out their anger on us, which they had done before. We threw a campsite party. We sang and danced for them. Someone in the group tore a dying branch from a nearby tree and shook it as part of his dance, its dry leaves making a rhythmic matching sound, in order to catch the vibrations as he twirled around the fire. As it happens at that exact moment, can you believe this? As it happens at that exact moment, the skies opened up. The drought was over. A sudden rain drenched the site. Everyone was shocked. And given the limited intellectual development of the clan at the time, the dance with the branch was credited with having produced the water from the sky. A way had been found to please and appease something other. A way had been found to get something other to do as we asked. Everyone was so excited. The Rain Man was elevated to a position of highest status. ritual, and a class of people who performed it was created. The clan believed that the dance with the branch by the Rain Man actually created the rain. And so it did in the future, more often than not. And by the way, this was not by coincidence. Metaphysics being what it is, the formula worked. For the metaphysical process, whether modern or ancient, produces in physicality whatever is fervently believed that it will produce. In that first instance, it was no doubt the ongoing fervent hope, the deeply earnest wish of the clan that the drought would end. And this generated that result. But the coincidence of the rain falling at the exact moment that the noisy dance was performed could hardly be ignored. So the two were put together and formed a false conclusion. Now, the narrative I've just shared is, of course, all of my imagining. It was a vision of what might have been, a fanciful insight perhaps, maybe even an inspiration of the possible that I received years ago. The entire story could be unreal, but I believe that either this or something very similar to this is what occurred in the early life of human beings and what produced our sense of separation, our sense of something other, and our sense that there might be, after all, a way of at least influencing that something other. To me, it seems clear that the earliest humans were dealing with the alchemy of the universe without knowing it. Thus was born what later came to be called religion. As our species grew more sophisticated in its understandings, we sought a more sophisticated way of seeking to appease the gods, and later, the single God that the vast majority of us ultimately decided must surely exist. We were, of course, right about that. A single God does exist, not a multiplicity of gods. But our idea about God, that it's something other, is what was inaccurate. That first conceptualization within our not yet fully developed minds is what created what I have called separation theology. Now, this idea that we are over here and that God is over there would not really matter if it began and ended there. But the problem with a separation theology is that it produces too often in too many people a separation cosmology. That is a way of looking at all of life that says everything is separate from everything else. This wouldn't be so bad if it was just a point of view, but the problem is that a separation cosmology produces too often in too many people a separation psychology. That is, a psychological viewpoint that says, I'm over here and you're over there. This would also be something we could live with if this was all there was to it. But the problem is that a separation psychology produces a separation sociology. That is, a way of socializing with each other that encourages everyone within human society to act as separate entities serving their own separate interests. Now we've entered into truly dangerous territory, because a separation sociology inevitably produces a separation pathology. That is, pathological behaviors of self-destruction, engaged in individually and collectively, and producing suffering, conflict, violence, and death by our own hands, evidenced everywhere on our planet throughout human history. Only when our separation theology is replaced by a oneness theology will our pathology be healed. A oneness theology recognizes that we have been differentiated from God, but not separated from God, even as the fingers of our hand are differentiated but not separated from the hand itself. Humanity is now being invited to understand that all of life is one thing. It is the first step. It is the jumping off point. It is the beginning of the end of how things are today. It is the start of a new creation, a new tomorrow. This is the new cultural story of humanity. Here is a statement from Conversations with God that I invite you to internalize. Oneness is not a characteristic of life. Life is a characteristic of oneness. Let me repeat that. I said, oneness is not a characteristic of life. Life is a characteristic of oneness. This is what we have not understood about our existence on earth, the understanding of which would change everything. Life is the expression of oneness itself. God is the expression of life itself. God and life are one. You are a part of life. You do not stand and cannot stand outside of it. Therefore, you are a part of God. It is a circle. It cannot be broken. I believe that when we begin acting in harmony with this truth, our entire experience of life will be altered forever. There will, in fact, be war no more. That will not be simply a song lyric. Violence in all forms will disappear. Depravity and insufficiency will end. Abject suffering and poverty will vanish. Cruelty will become unthinkable. Insufficiency insupportable. Indignity unacceptable. Starvation impossible. And intolerance intolerable. We will have civilized civilization at last. What are the implications of adopting oneness as a way of being in humanity's collective and individual daily life? Well, let me share some thoughts about that. We would probably not let 842 million people, that's 1 in 8 in the world, go to bed hungry tonight. Much less would we allow 656 children to die every hour on this planet of starvation. We would probably not make over 3 billion people have to survive on less than $2.50 a day. We would probably not let 1.7 billion people go without clean water, or 1.6 billion people, a quarter of humanity, live without electricity, or 2.6 exist without basic sanitation. That's right. Over 2.6 billion people today do not have indoor bathrooms. These conditions exist because we think that we are over here and all those other people are over there. The day we embrace the truth that we are all one, all of this could disappear. We would not allow anyone else to be forced to live under conditions that we would never allow ourselves to be subjected to. We would, in fact, do unto others as we would, no doubt, have it done unto us. Because we would realize that there are no others, that there is only us, that we are all one. Let me tell you about the I Am tool. This is a little strategy that someone gave me nearly 20 years ago to help me embrace the notion and to absorb the reality that I am one with everyone. It was a spiritual mentor of mine who suggested that I take a 20-minute walk down the street every day for 30 days and say silently inside of my head 3 words every time my eyes landed on something. It didn't matter what I happened to be looking at, she said. Whatever I caught a glimpse of, I was to say to myself, I am that. I am that tree. I am that flower. I am that trash bin. I am that person who's acting very badly. I am that person who's doing something very wonderful. I was to challenge myself to identify everything I saw with myself, everything that I encountered. The point of the exercise was to see if I could identify any part of me, even a tiny, almost hidden aspect of myself that I was observing in someone or something else. Was I seeing something beautiful? Was there something beautiful in me? Was I seeing something not so beautiful? Was there something not so beautiful in me? Could I remember feeling what another person seemed to be feeling when they were doing something very nice? Could I remember feeling what another person was feeling when they seemed to be doing something that was not so nice? How willing and able was I to find in myself what I was finding in another? This turned out for me to be a truly fascinating test of whether I understood what it meant to say we are all one. I did this for 30 days, and I can tell you that it changed my experience of other people and of the world outside of me. I became much less judgmental of other people, places, and things, and I became much more loving and accepting of myself as well. So I wanted to end this installment by sharing that tool with you. Now, here is today's assignment. Number 1, choose a specific behavior regarding a specific person in your life that you will now consciously and radically alter. Number 2, walk down any street today and use the I Am tool no less than 10 times in the first 10 minutes. Keep a brief running narration in your smartphone notes or on a small spiral notepad of what feelings, if any, this exercise generates. That's it for now. See you tomorrow.